and welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. Imagine embarking on a journey, but feeling like you're navigating a vast, uncharted sea all alone. Many aspiring authors can relate to this initial sense of isolation, where the dream of becoming a published author appears elusive or overwhelming. In the literary world, it's often said that success is not a solo endeavor, but a collaborative achievement. This sentiment strongly resonates with today's guest, who started their writing journey unafraid but made little progress until they found their writing community. As we delve into his story, we'll explore how finding a supportive and engaged writing community can make all the difference in honing one's craft and gaining the confidence needed to thrive in the competitive world of publishing. We'll also discover the power of short stories, both as a stepping stone to publication and as a valuable skill set that can enrich long form fiction writing. So, whether you're an aspiring author seeking inspiration, a writer looking to navigate the short story market, or simply curious about the transformative power of community in the world of writing, you're in the right place. Winner of the 2022 Critters Reader's Choice Award for Best Magical Realism Short Story, David Hankins is taking his experience and transforming it into an expanded full-length novel, Death and the Taxman. And we're lucky to have him on the show today. So welcome, David.
I'm very
So
happy to be here talking about writing and short stories and long fiction and all of it.
I love it. So, just before we jump into all of that, tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing journey.
Okay. I write lighthearted speculative fiction because that's what I like to read. And because, and this is the important bit, there's not nearly enough humor in the world. I aim to change that one story at a time. So I started out writing alone and unafraid. I had 2.5 mid-grade novels that had grown from stories I was telling my daughter, turned into this whole storyline, and turned them into books, and started sending the first one out to agents and got nothing. Like maybe 5-10% of the agents actually responded. The rest just silence. And so, I was feeling a little down and thought, well, maybe I need to get credits to my name. Let me try short stories. I'll look up a short story contest, see what's out there, pull up Google, and the first one to pop up was Writers of the Future. I'd never heard of Writers of the Future before. I was like, hey, maybe I should actually take an online course or something on how to write short fiction. Google, first thing to pop up, Writers of the Future. And I was like, okay, I need to check these guys out. So they have an online writing course that's, self-paced videos and assignments from some big name authors. I took the course, wrote my first short story as I took the course, and submitted it to the contest, feeling really good about myself. And about 3 months later, it came back with an honorable mention. It was the first credit I'd ever received as writing. I was like, fantastic. And I was hooked at that point. And so there's a forum that's part of the Writers of the Future website. And so I dove into that, really started to discover my writing community at that point. And my writing growth exploded. Fast forward 18 months, and I actually won the contest. At that first submission, I didn't realize it's the biggest speculative contest for amateur authors in the world. And so I won the contest with a short story called Death and the Taxman. And my writing journey has just continued on. Got my first novel that I'm currently in the process of publishing. I had it through Kickstarter that just ended in September. And it'll be coming out on April 15th on Tax Day, which the story itself is called Death and the Taxman. And the short story that won that contest, then I expanded out into a full-length novel.
Wow. Okay, so first, give me the parameters for what a short story is, because I've never actually set out to just write a short story. So what are those guidelines and parameters for that?
So, every market has a different parameter of what they accept. Writers of the Future, they accept anything up to 17,000 words, which is actually a novelette. But their winning stories tend to be around 6,000 to 8,000 words. Mine was right in that range. I think it was after editing, it was about 7,000.
Okay. So I'm thinking I've never written that few words and gotten a full story across. Like it takes me, my first novel was like 110,000 words because I was like, I need to say more. There's more to the story.
Right.
Like
Yep.
I am not not brief at all. I mean, that's true when I'm telling stories verbally too. Like when I'm sitting there, we'll travel all over the world to get there.
Right. Yep.
So have you always just been such a good short storyteller, or
Oh
was that a
no.
skill that you
No, no,
had to
no.
hone?
That was a skill I had to learn.
Okay.
So yeah, my first short story, it was called Hell's Bureaucracy, actually in the same world as my Death and the Taxman. And I think the version that went into Writers of the Future was about 7,000 words again. But they don't publish the honorable mentions, only the winners. I sat on that one for about a year because I realized at that point that it wasn't publishable yet. And so I wasn't going to go back and edit it until I'd learned a lot more. Went back, edited it, and it finally sold at just about 3,000 words. So I cut out half of the story without changing the story. And so yeah, all that excess verbiage just getting much more tighter. My descriptions were hinting at things, finding something that, if I say, cubicle, people can picture a cubicle. I don't have to talk about the carpeted walls and the, old monitor and all that unless I want to get very specific. But hey, the guy's in a cubicle. All right, they can picture that. Move on to the story. So stuff like that where you're hinting at things, you coding it in ways that the reader does the rest of the work, as long as you're using the right coding so they're seeing the same picture you are. So very specific word choices help with that.
Okay, because I'm struggling literally, and I have made so many posts about this just recently. My current book that is coming out in February is like 130,000 words. My editor is like, you have got to cut words, and I did. But then I added 2 new chapters because I was like, well, she wanted me to expound on something, and so we're back up to 130,000 words. And so I am just thinking, I don't know that I'm cut out for short stories, or do you think anybody can learn this?
Anyone can learn it. One of the things, and there were a lot of things that went into me being able to write award-winning short stories, but one of them was an editing book that was recommended to me by my writing mentor called The 10% Solution by Ken Rand. It is the tiniest little book, and it is about making your editing 10%, or making your story 10% smaller. Oh. And it's all about
write that down.
Yeah, the 10% Solution by Ken Rand. I think they're like $7 on Amazon or something like that for the paperback. But he talks about the way you say things. Instead of using, he was running, he runs, or he ran. Just cutting out those 1 or 2 words, and you keep doing that, and you get a tighter story. And he's got all these different examples of things that writers use all the time, just, doing the word vomit onto the page that, well, you can cut out half of those words and have a good tight sentence.
That's true. And so do you think, would it vary from genre to genre, or do you think that that's applicable to all genres? Because, I write romance and not like contemporary. It's like a sweet, clean romance, and so there are more flowery words, though. You're using more emotional things, and so do you think that it goes cross genres, or do you think it works mostly?
I think it does go cross genre, because when you start taking out the fluff words, you have more room for the words that matter. And so I'm doing a alpha read for a friend right now, and that's one of my comments to her is, your book itself, is it just the right word count? There are some words here that you can cut out so you can add in, sensory details. How did it smell in the room? What did it feel like when she touched the door? Stuff like that, things that really make the world come alive, that will, the words that matter. And so that's really what I found with the short stories is I learned to focus on the words that matter. And what helped me really learn that was through my writing group. Well, there's a whole story here. Let me back up a little bit. So started out with the Writers of the Future Forum, which I got in, their course that they have, their online course, taught me the basics. Here's your plot structure, what you need for beginning, middle, end, get tension into your story, stuff like that. A bunch of things that I went, oh, I thought I was doing that, but no, I guess not. Huh. And so that was the basics. Then I got into their forum, and there was this one thread called Wolf Moon Super Secrets. And it was a tongue-in-cheek thing. He was a previous winner of Writers of the Future. And he said, writing's not hard. These are the super secrets of writing. And he just started putting out, very simple things. And he has this way of expressing things so that the light bulb goes off. You're like, oh, it's so simple. You're right. Huh. And so I started studying his super secrets of writing. And one of them, an exercise that he has, is the Kill Your Darling exercise, where I won't go through the whole thing because he's got a master class on how to do this. But you have a 1,000 words that you start out with that you compress down, boil down to its tightest, most potent bit at 250 words. That is just a vignette where you get the heart's desire. What does your character truly, truly want? Cut out all those other side characters. You need enough description so you know what's going on, but you're focused on that heart's desire. And doing that exercise over and over and over again, that's where I learned to go, okay, that's 3 words that says this. Here is 1 word that says the same thing more evocatively. And doing that, it became part of my writing. And so now I'm to the point where I'm writing things and those words are coming more naturally just because I've practiced it.
That makes perfect sense. And so, all right, so you've tightened up your writing and you can say a lot and just a little. And now you're expanding your short story into long form fiction. Has that been a struggle to say, okay, now I need more words? Because you're talking minimum of 50,000 words kind of thing. Have you found yourself like,
so yes, I found when I was expanding my short story into a novel, I think it was around 20,000 words. I went, I don't have enough story. And I, was like, all right, let me throw in some tri-fail cycles and, add a couple more characters and stuff like that. And my cast grew way more than it should have. But they're all great people. And now I'm starting on book 2 going, and how do I weave them all into book 2? But as I went through, the hardest thing I had was expanding descriptions. Because before I would just hint at things. I took a class from Dean Wesley Smith. He is a very, very prolific writer. The one that I knew the most about was he wrote Men in Black. And so anyway, this class was all about getting the reader deep into your story right at the beginning. He's like, it's all about the description. You set your world, set your stage, write things that aren't about plot, just let them immerse them into the story. And I was like, okay. So I went back and every single scene, let me immerse them into the story, like 400 words of just set the scene, what's it look like, smell like, taste like, whatever it is. And that helped me expand my world. And just doing that over and over and over again, I finally got up to my final manuscript is at 56,000 words. So I'm like, it's a novel. Okay.
It counts.
It counts.
Got it. Okay. So with all of that, are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm a plotzer.
Oh,
so
yes.
I plot it out and I think this is how things are going to go. And then it takes a left turn. Something happens. I'm like, wait, character, what are you doing? So I was about halfway through the book And I had introduced this character that, my main character is the Grim Reaper, stuck in a IRS agent's dying body. And so it's a Freaky Friday kind of thing. He's trying to figure out how to survive being human. One of the characters he meets is a housewife who's also like, she does part-time work as a nurse. And initially my plan was she's just kind of a side character. She gives some good advice, but that's about it. And as he is meeting her, he realizes, oh my goodness, I know when every person dies, she's immortal. I was like, where did that come from? But it's in the story. And so now she is the immortal character that's probably going to be one of the major characters in book 3.
It's hilarious. I love when that happens though, because then you're like, okay, now I have another question to answer. And so you can expand the story just a little bit when they start taking. Sometimes though, you do have to rein them in and say, now is not the time. Now is not the time.
Right.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. So you've been actively engaged in writing communities and you have found your people. Have you branched outside of those starter communities and found other?
I have. Okay. Yep. I started with the Writers of the Future Forum, and then Wolf Moon set up what he calls the Wolfpack Writers, and I joined that writing group, and they've been fantastic. As a writing group, we actually target anthologies of, hey, there's an anthology call. We are practiced in writing to prompts. And so, all right, write a short story about space princesses. Okay. Space princesses. Oh, it was actually, that one was princesses and troubadours. And so I was like, okay, princesses and troubadours. I now have a story about a lieutenant in the army who ends up ending the rat war because he wrote a song. Sure, why not? And it actually got picked up by the anthology, which publishes in February of 24. So one of those things. Anyway, so yeah, I got into the writing community. Very active. A lot of people really growing, working together. Iron sharpens iron. Lots of us critiquing each other's stories and helping each other grow. A bunch of challenges within the writing group, and then outside of that, I've also found another group that's more a professional group. There's a conference called Superstars Writing Seminars. It's in Colorado Springs every February, and I went to it. I actually won a scholarship, their inaugural Dave Farland scholarship, to go to it in 23. And so I went there, and it was not like any other con I've been to. It's very small. They've actually capped it at 450 people. And the intent is, we are tribe. We are the group of people. We work together to help each other business-wise in order to succeed. And that's what they focus on. Other writing conferences, it's all about the art and craft of writing. This one, it's how do you get published? How do you, get your book actually printed? I sat in on a couple of classes on the actual printing process, where this guy's going, all right, here's the small printing press, here's the big printing press, and the inks go through. I was like, what? Oh yeah, it was fantastic. And there were classes on, here's how to do business finances for authors and stuff like that. And even after the conference, anytime I've had a question, like I had a legal question of what should I do, and I reached out to Kevin J. Anderson, who's an author that has written pretty much most of the Star Wars books out there at this point. But anyway, I reached out to him, and he responded right away. He's like, oh yeah, here's what you need to do. Here's a person that you can contact if you have any further questions. I was like, oh, fantastic. And so it's just a group that helps each other, paying it forward. No one is doing it, oh, well, you got to pay me for the consult time or anything like that. No, it's just a group that everyone pays it forward, because as writers, we're not in competition with each other. There are enough readers out there that there will never be enough books for them. So writers helping writers can only help all of us.
Absolutely. I love that. And that is my whole goal here, is to connect people with the information or the resources that they need in order to be successful in their author journey, whether they are self-published or traditionally published or anything like that. Like, I think we should all be backing each other for that, because there's not enough niceness or kindness in the world either. I think that's and authors are kind of a special case, because we all have the understanding that there's room for criticism, and we're subjected to it regularly. And so we kind of have to build up, which leads me to a question. When you first joined your writing group, how hard was it to put your work out there for, because, you were doing it solo for so long. Was it hard for you to be like, here, please critique the soul that I bled onto this paper?
That was difficult the first few times, because the first few critiques I did when I was in the Writers of the Future forum, I didn't really know who to reach out to. So it's kind of a, hey, I've got a story. Can anyone give me a critique? And, whoever volunteers. The first couple were, not bad. I learned a couple things. There's a couple that I said, thank you very much for your time. And I never asked that person again, because they were caustic. And I was like, okay, not the person I want to deal with. And there's some people out there like that. But once I got, actually the first critique I got from someone that was right on the edge of breaking out. She, in fact, within, I think, 1 or 2 quarters, she was a published finalist in Writers of the Future, which sometimes they'll grab a finalist because there's not enough to fill the anthology. And so she became a published finalist. But I got a critique from her, and she had learned her critique method from Wolf Moon, because she was part of his workshop. And that method that she used of what I call the compliment sandwich of, here's something good, here's something to fix, and here's something good, really helped. Here's a positive way to give information on what you need to fix. And I definitely had some things on that story that I needed to fix. But yeah, initially getting the stories out there, letting other people critique it was very painful. But as with anything, over time, with practice, it got better. And I found the people that could be critique partners. That has shifted over time. Some, I've grown faster than others. Others have gone in different directions. Like, there's one guy that he and I initially had very much the same style of writing. He went deep, dark horror. He's good at it. I hate horror. So I was like, thank you so much. I can't read this story because it will give me nightmares. And so, he found another critique partner that also loved the deep, dark horrors, and they have done very well together. And, and so, yeah, you find people that are compatible. And so as I've now moved on to novels, I have found a few people that are have a compatible writing style, that are good at critiquing, that provide good, insightful feedback, which is so critical in an alpha read.
Absolutely. And there's so much good information just to unpack right there. Just one, be willing to accept criticism, of your work. Mm-hmm. Find the people who will give it to you kindly but honestly, but also be the person that gives criticism those same ways. Understand that there's a good way and there's a wrong way to give criticism. And those people who they think, I'm just being honest, you can be honest without being cruel.
Yes. Yeah. I have known a few people just in life who use that philosophy. I'm like, no, you just want to be mean.
Yeah, seriously. Like there's and I am a very bluntly honest person, but I also know how to deliver it in such a way where you think, oh, okay, that was helpful. And it's like, no, trust me, if you heard the inner monologue that I had to go through to get to that point, but there is a way to filter and to cushion the blow. Yeah. Okay, so my next question is, through all of this, are you self-published, traditionally published, hybrid? How does that work? What's going on?
Well, for short stories, I'm traditionally published. In the short story market, yes, you can publish your own short stories on Amazon if you want to, or on your website or wherever. But really, in order to get short stories out there to where readers are going to read them, traditional publishing through a magazine or anthology is still the way to go. And so all of my short stories have been published in upper tier, semi-pro or pro magazines. And, but then flipping over to novels. So my first novel is coming out April 15th, and that one is indie published. I did a Kickstarter in September in order to fund that publication, getting all once that finished, getting everything out to the backers and all that stuff. That was its own learning curve because it was my first Kickstarter. But that will be coming out in April, indie published completely. So got my own illustrator, editor, all of that stuff in order to make sure that it's the best product that I can possibly put out.
Let's talk about Kickstarter, because that's kind of a new thing for authors to be taking advantage of. And it's something, and I'm intrigued by it because I am very interested in an audiobook version of my books, but that's expensive. Like, I don't know if you've looked into it, but it's expensive. And I'm like, what?
There's a reason I did not do an audiobook stretch goal for my Kickstarter, because I didn't want to dive into that yet.
Yeah.
It will come eventually. Not yet. Let me get it published first.
Well, and that's the thing. My first one's been out. This week is a year that it's been out, which is
congratulations.
Thank you. Like, it's crazy to even think that it's already been a year, because so much happens. Like when you're publishing your own stuff, there's so much that you're responsible for. And then I tacked on a podcast because I'm a masochist.
Because why not? Yeah.
I mean, why not? It's fun. And so, but there's so much that happens. But then I was looking at possibly doing a Kickstarter, because I know, so my husband has a mild form of dyslexia. And so audiobooks are the way that he reads. And because I didn't have audiobook versions of mine, he had to listen to the computer voice read the PDF version to him, which is fine. He can still get the story that way. But there's something about being, brought to life by an actual narrator who can connect with the characters and that kind of thing. And so, I was looking at it, and we're talking, $3,000-$4,000 for like a legit narrator and that kind of thing. And I thought, holy cow. So how did you set up your Kickstarter for your book in general? Like where did you start with that? How did that process go?
So I was very worried about not having enough stuff to offer for the Kickstarter, because Kickstarters have a wide range. They can be very small, where you are offering, here's my book, here's a print copy ebook, and maybe a hardback version, and that's all I'm offering. And you're asking, trying to raise $500, and that's fine. That's fantastic. It's, that would have been a much easier Kickstarter than what I did. So I was offering my book in ebook, paperback, hardback, but I've also been in a lot of anthologies up to this point. And so I went, well, I can also offer copies of the anthologies. So I reached out to the editors, said, hey, can I get it at a wholesale cost? Each editor had a different wholesale cost, but ranging from, I only have to pay 25% of their print of their list price to I have to pay 75% of their list price. So my profit on that one is negligible, but the other one makes up for it. So it balances out. Anyway, so I was like, well, I have all these anthologies I've been in, so I can do tiers that are bundles. Hey, here's a bundle of anthologies that, match this thing. Here's a bundle that matched that thing. And so that I got some more tiers that way. I turned the anthologies into add-ons. And then I looked at my illustrator, who she was the one that illustrated my story for Writers of the Future. In Writers of the Future, they have a writing contest and an illustrator contest that occurs simultaneous. And so each illustrator winner is assigned a story, and they have to create an illustration to match it. This picture of Frank here on the front, that was her illustration. As soon as I saw it, I said, I need that for the cover of my book. Let's talk contracts. And so she also had a lot of other amazing award-winning art, and so I offered some of her art as well, which, having good pictures, good art in your Kickstarter draws people in. And so, using all of that stuff, I was able to build out my Kickstarter to where here's what I'm offering. Some things went really well, other things didn't sell at all. So I learned for my next Kickstarter, and the actual building of it. It's interesting because it's a story also. They actually call it a story on the Kickstarter page. Here's your story. Tell us about your book. Tell us about you. Tell us about, all this stuff, because something I didn't realize, the Kickstarter community is not the same as readers who buy books at Amazon. They are supporting Kickstarters because they believe in creators. They want to get to know the creator. And so I was like, all right, they want to get to know me. That sounds like a first person story. So I wrote the whole thing in first person. Outside of the little blurbs that I had from my story, that, the hooks in order to pull them in. So I told the story of, hey, this is me. I won this contest. Here's a picture of me winning the contest. I turned the story into a novel and blah, 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 blah. And I just kept that voice throughout the whole thing, because I'm like, well, they're buying it looking for the way I write. And so this is the way I write. And so, yeah, building it out. And then, just like with anything, I got it critiqued. I reached out to some people that had done Kickstarters before. Actually, Wolf Moon had run one for his book, How to Write a Howling Good Story, that just published in October, November. So as he's finishing up his Kickstarter fulfillment, he's publishing the book. And I was like, hey, what did you, do well? What did you, learn that you shouldn't have done, stuff like that. And through his advice, I was able to tweak a few things. And as well as there's a group I found, another writing group I found on Facebook called Kickstarter for Authors. If you want to do a Kickstarter, join that group. Again, they're people who are paying it forward. They are authors who have done their own Kickstarters, and they will, critique your stuff. Again, some people will give critiques that you go, thank you very much, I'm not going to ask you again. And other people, oh, well, you've done 15 Kickstarters, your advice is valuable. And they'll give you advice of, hey, this typically works, this doesn't. But again, another thing we haven't talked about yet, but in all things writing, everyone has different ideas of what right is.
Yep.
You have to write your story this way. If it's not written this way, it is not a proper story. And then someone else says the exact opposite with the same level of emphasis. And same thing with the Kickstarter. My biggest anxiety was funding. What not would I fund? What level do I put my ask at? The general guidance was it should be $500, because it's your first Kickstarter, you're an emerging author, you have no idea what you're going to get. The opposite advice I got was, well, no, it actually needs to be $2,000 because of the algorithms that Kickstarter has. They, in order for it to get noticed by Kickstarter, to get, that extra boost where they start promoting it, it has to be a higher dollar amount. I was like, I don't know where to go. So I went in the middle, 1,500. Yes. And it funded within 2 hours. And then it got Kickstarter has something called a Project We Love, where that is an actual person who has curated throughout all the projects of the day, week, month, I'm not sure. And, it goes to committee. They say, yep, these are the ones we love. And it gets a sticker. I got that sticker at 5 hours. And so, yeah, that just helped build it. And I wouldn't have gotten that without the outside advice of people going, these are the best practices. These are the ways to do it. Oh, one other thing I forgot to add I also took a class by Dean Wesley Smith. He has a million classes on Teachable, but one that is free is, I'm getting the name wrong here, but it's, again, like a Kickstarter for authors type class. And he did it right after Brandon Sanderson did his record-breaking
Millions,
40 plus
yes.
$1 million Kickstarter. He said, so this is a thing now. Let's study it. And
That
he
is
has
wild.
done Kickstarters. I think he does 6 a year. Dean Wesley Smith does.
That's crazy. So obviously you've met your goal. So
Yep.
For those of us who have never done a Kickstarter, what are you funding with the Kickstarter?
So with the Kickstarter, I am paying for the actual printing of the book. I'm paying for the art and illustration, and I had stretch goals for extra art and illustration, chapter header icons, an extra interior art, which my illustrator is working on right now, and it looks fantastic. And, stuff like that. So it's paying for those extras. Initially I was just going to do a laminate hardback. Said, well, okay, we'll do a stretch goal for dust jackets. All right, we paid for that. They all have dust jackets now. It's one more thing I just have to click as I do it in Ingram Spark. Not that difficult for me, but it makes the book look that much more professional. As well as it paid for, I got a copy edit from a professional copy editor because, like I said, I'm trying to make this look as professional as possible. So stuff like that. The shipping is, of course, part of the cost. And then I think after all is said and done, I'll have maybe a 30% profit once everything has been shipped out and is in people's hands, which isn't bad.
Not bad at all. And it's funny because you don't really know, especially when it's your first go, if you aren't asking other people, how does this work for you? Those costs can sneak up on you. And the next thing you know, you're like, oh, shoot, how can I afford this? And then you're delayed because you're talking editing, you're talking cover design, you're talking, all the little extras that just make it something special.
Buying ISBNs. Yes. I had no idea how much it would cost me to buy 100 pack of ISBN because I'm not buying them one at a time because they're way too expensive one at a time.
Yes, they are. I think I bought 10. I think I started with 10. I was like, if I can make it through 10, then I know that I'm serious about this, but then after that, we're like, just give me all of them because those are little prices because yes, you can get the free Kindle number and that kind of thing, but
but you can only use it on Kindle. I'm not going to just go on Kindle. I'm going wide.
And so if you're not sure, make sure that I think Kickstarter is a great idea for authors because especially indie authors who don't have the publishing houses backing them. And so, I'm so glad that it was successful for you. And I hope that it continues to be successful in those, just for all the books that you, to all 100 of those ISBNs you plan to use.
Well, thank you very much. I hope so too.
I bet you do.
One of the things I enjoyed about the Kickstarters, it actually expanded my fan base. Because it's a totally separate world in and of itself. And so I had the people that knew me initially, they were the ones that got me through the initial funding goal. My friends and family, writing group, the people that already were following me on social media. And then everyone beyond that, new readers, because they found me through, doing searches on Kickstarter. It popped up on their Kickstarter feed. Kickstarter itself shared it on Twitter or Facebook, and so for my writing newsletter, I have now doubled the people that I'm sending it to. Granted, I had a pretty low number that I was sending it to initially, but hey, it's doubled. That sounds much better.
Absolutely. And those newsletters are important, which leads me to another question. How are you marketing your book?
So at this point, I've only been marketing on social media. And that's been relatively successful because I did all of my marketing for the Kickstarter on social media, and which is exhausting to do for 30 days because I was posting at least once a day. If I could do 2 to 3 times a day, I was. By the time I think in the last week, I hit burnout. I was like, I'm done. I'm tired. I hate social media. But that's how I promoted it, and I think it was fairly successful. Kickstarter actually has a cool thing where you can create specialized tags on every link that you make. And so I made a specialized link for every single social media platform I'm on. So I could tell Twitter got me a couple of backers, Facebook got me a lot of backers, Instagram got me nothing.
Yeah.
That was the way they worked. And I used those same tags. My writing newsletter got me the most of the backers that I was able to track. And then the most backers actually just came from Kickstarter itself, people that had searched or found it as it popped up for them.
That's awesome. So have you ventured into the world of TikTok?
No.
He said no.
No.
Okay.
I'm good at putting pictures of myself and my cat and my book up on social media. I'm not that good at creating and editing videos. I've done a couple of videos, one or two did well, one or two got maybe 3 likes. I haven't ventured into TikTok at all.
It's got its whole universe for books, and book talk is a huge thing over there. And so I was just wondering if you had made your way over there, because I know several people who, especially in the fantasy genre, and those genres, they have a pretty wide audience. And so I was just wondering if that was something you had ever considered, because
I've considered it, but I need to get more comfortable doing my own videos and doing them quickly, because that's the thing. I can snap a picture, edit it real quick on my phone, and post it, be done in 5 minutes. Videos for me, it takes me longer.
Okay, what's hilarious is that I can't get enough across with a picture, which goes back to the fact that I need more words to tell a story. And so give me a video all day long and I'm going to just, blah, 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 blah. But you give me a picture and I'm like, I can't get it across in just a picture. So I think that says something about a lot. That's hilarious. Oh, okay, David. We are to the point of our show where we flip the script and you are now in charge. So I am letting go of the reins and letting you go.
Well, I'm going to start by asking you a question. How did you get into writing? What was your origin story?
So I have always been a writer. I started writing when I was a kid. Everything got written down. Like I had notebooks and journals and scrap pieces of paper, just you name it. I had a diary and, all those things. And so writing has always just been a way that I process my thoughts and my emotions. Like it was just a thing. Okay. I started, and I always made really good grades in school when it came to writing. It was always, English is just a thing that I enjoy, and language arts and that kind of thing. And reading, very, very passionate reading, history. And so it just kind of all went together. But I didn't become an author until just in the last couple of years, like as far as publishing my work. I did have several speeches and essays that won oratorical contests and that kind of thing back
very nice.
Over the years. Yeah, like me and words, we go well together. We just like to get together and have a good time. And so it was just in the last couple of years that I thought I needed to finish out a dream that I'd had. I wanted to know how it ended. And so I started writing it out. And like 4 chapters in, I thought, hey, this could be a book. And I said, I think I'm going to write a book. And my husband just kind of looked at me and was like, you do that. And now my 3rd one comes out in February. It was just like, hey, why not?
Very nice.
Yeah. So it was a fluke. But I've always wanted to, I've always enjoyed writing, whether, back when blogs were popular, I was always blogging something, and I don't know, words have just always been a fun thing for me.
Okay. And so what made you decide to add the podcast to your writing, other than just you like having words?
Words and people. No, honestly, it became a way for me to connect with people who had answers that I was looking for. It's kind of like you and your writing communities, right? I wanted to know how other authors were functioning. I wanted to know how people writing in my genre were, making it work. I wanted to know, I had legal questions. So I had an entertainment lawyer on. And so we had a conversation that way. Hybrid publishers and, all these editors. And my kid even interviewed me one time. That was fun. She just wanted to try it. And I was like, sure, let's do it. Great. And so it was just a matter of, I needed resources, and I like to provide resources. I've always been a teacher, like just naturally a teacher. I like teaching. And so I was like, well, this is kind of like teaching, because I'm bringing on people who are experts on topic XYZ, short stories, and I'm like, here, authors may need to know about short story writing and how to get into it and how to succeed in it and that kind of thing. And so just making the resources available and connecting people through conversation. I mean, it's fun on top of that. And it promotes other people's work, which I'm also a big fan of.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah. And it's really, connected conversations. What's funny is, so my husband's a manager in a big company, and he has employees, and he has connected conversations with them regularly to just kind of like get a pulse on how they're doing personally and, in work and that kind of thing. And I was like, ooh, connected conversations. I like that, because that's the best way to connect. We've lost that. That's an art that's been lost. We have these phones in our hands all the time, and we're like, I can connect with you in a, hey, what's up, and an emoji. And it's like, that's not connecting, right? Like you don't connect through that. And so it's like, we're going to connect with other creatives through conversation. And so that's how it happened.
Fantastic. Well, stuff. My origin story, I gave you how I started with the short stories and getting, winning the award and actually getting published. But stepping back a few years, it all started with a story, lots of stories with my daughter. So I was trying to tell her inventive stories to get her to fall asleep. I stole from the classics, shucked the protagonist, and put in my daughter, Beatrix the Brave, who was then the protagonist that would go and fight the dragons and witches and, save the princess by, Sleeping Beauty. She plucked her finger off of the spinning wheel and Sleeping Beauty woke up. And so it worked great. I had all these stories that Beatrix the Brave just kind of jumped from legend to Disney story to whatever. And it became this expanded timeline that was kind of all one nebulous story. And then she got old enough to start picking holes in my stories. She said, no. Last night you said, so I had to start writing them down. By the way, I didn't realize at the time, apparently there's a legend about this happened to Tolkien too, where he was telling the Hobbit to his son, and his son's like, no. You said the dwarf's hat was blue yesterday. So like,
I didn't.
Boy, you had go write it down. And so, yeah, I started writing it down, and that's how I ended up with 2.5 mid-grade novels, because I was writing them for my daughter, and the storyline was growing as she did. And so now I've gone back. I've actually looked at those original books. There is a reason that the agents did not respond. Great core stories there. They need to be rewritten from the ground up. And I'll get to a little bit.
Yes, but how special that one day you can hand that over to your daughter, and then she can read them to her kids. And
right.
I love that whole idea.
Yep. And so
that's so sweet.
My plan is right now, I have Death and the Taxman that will become a trilogy. Once I'm done with that trilogy, I'm thinking of going back to Beatrix the Brave and writing it as probably as a YA novel, or brilliant. YA trilogy rather.
Yeah. So when my kiddo, she was, this started early. She was probably 5 or 6, and she always, we'd say, oh, what did you dream about last night? And she would start spouting off things or whatever. And one night she asked her daddy, said, what should I dream about tonight? And so he, told her Harry Potter or something. Right. And she was like, but what did he do? And so it was very similar in the sense that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of spun off into other things. And so then all of a sudden, after, I don't know, several weeks of this process, she started calling them dream sections. And she's like, what dream sections should I have today? And that's how she
Nice.
described them, because they would jump from thing to thing. And so it became this whole thing, like Harry Potter would not be a wizard, he would be a janitor or something. You know, it'd be so random.
Sure. Yeah.
And I mean, it was just stuff like that. But I love that. What is it with daddies and their little girls and their bedtime stories? That's so
Mm-hmm.
sweet.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
So what else you want to talk about?
well, let's see. Well, we talked about short stories, the writing of short stories. A lot of people have difficulty figuring out how to find the short story markets.
Yes, that was one of the things. Let's talk about that.
So I use a website called Submission Grinder, and it is a very simple database kind of website. It's actually managed by an editor of one of the magazines, Diabolical Plots. And the Submission Grinder lists every short story market out there that they can find. And, you know, even to the point where they have listings that this market closed 6 years ago, permanently closed, but they still have a listing for them. And they have all the details of how much they pay per word. Do they accept originals, reprints, length of story, you know, and they pull all the stuff off of that website, off of the publisher website, where if they say, hey, we want everything except vampire stories. We've gotten way too many vampire stories. Please stop sending us vampire stories. So Submission Grinder will put those little notes. No vampire stories. And so you can plug in your story. All right, I have this story that is 5,000 words, that is in these genres, and I want 5 cents a word or more. Search. And it'll do its little spinny thing and then pop up. All right, here are the 12 places that are currently open. Oh, cool. Well, that one only looks for horror, horror, horror. Oh, hey, this one. Oh, let me try that one. And so it's a really good resource that it's run by volunteers, like a lot of things in the short story market. I think there are very few short story magazines that are actually making a profit. In fact, there's a couple of them that have closed recently because of recent changes in how Amazon managed its subscription services. And so one of the major magazines just closed, and there are others that are on the edge of having to close because it's, for whatever reason, people are expecting free content. They don't want to pay for content, but how do you pay the authors if no one's paying for the content? And yeah, I don't know how the magazines actually do it, but I'm very grateful that they do.
And they see there's a resource available to make it really easy to find exactly where you fit, and you don't have to go guessing and saying, let me just submit it to everybody and then be rejected 47 times.
Well, and the great thing is they don't just do speculative fiction. So if you have just a general genre, you know, a story, if it's a thriller, a romance, whatever, there are markets that's what they look for. And so, you know, whatever genre you're writing in, it's a resource that you can find and go, okay, well, let's go look. But something that you have to keep in mind, the rejection rate in the short story market is brutal. 2% acceptance rate. Yeah. So the first few rejections I got were, you know, shattering. I was just like, no. I sent my story out there and they said no. What am I going to do with my life? And I had to, you know, go back to my previous life and, you know, pull some of those resilience lessons that I'd learned forward and go, okay, it's not about me. They have a million submissions that they get, and they just have to pick the top 2% in order to publish. And, you know, all right, take the reject, send it off to the next place. I actually had an editor for the magazine Dreamforge magazine, who they've actually published a few of my stories now. They're fantastic magazine of positive fiction. That is their goal. They're like, we love watching horror on TV and reading horror stories. That's not what we publish. We want things that look at a positive future. And so they published a couple of mine, but one of the editor's comments really stuck with me. He said, "It's not a rejection, it's a return." It's like a library book. So I have lent my story to the editor, and he returned it, said, "Thanks, not for me." Okay, I'll find another editor. I'll lend it out. And just that reframing of the problem helped my mental health so much as I'm in these trenches of 98% rejection, in order to just keep sending them out. And so even now I still have short stories out at market. They'll come back. Most of them come back as rejects. I'm sorry, as returns. And I have my little pity party for about 5 minutes. Then I send it off to the next place.
Well, that's valid for, once you have a book out there, not everybody is the right reader for your book.
That's true.
Not everybody likes speculative fiction. Not everybody likes romance. Not everybody likes horror. And so if the wrong person picks up your book just because they don't like it, and even if they are nice enough to leave a review to let you know that they didn't like your book,
right.
It's not you, right? Like, yeah, maybe there are now, if you start seeing the same technical suggestions over and over again,
okay, maybe it is you.
Yeah, it could be you. But for the most part, if somebody doesn't connect with your story, then that story was not meant for them. Move on.
Right. Yep. And like I've seen people leave 1-star reviews for, like, you write the clean romance. It wasn't spicy enough for me. Well, it says in the description, clean romance. Where did I say spicy? And
exactly,
wrong reader.
Yes, and I had that experience with the beta readers who she was a little older, and so she was reading this most recent one, and it's a sweet love story, but the characters were all far younger than she, and she just could not connect with the story. She didn't understand childhood lovers, and that kind of thing, and it was just like, I even screened it. I screened all of my beta readers, and it was on me. It was on me. But she was like, "Oh yeah, I would love to do it, and I'm a big reader." And I was like, "Okay." It just wasn't for her because she was the only one with that feedback, of all the other readers. And so, know your audience.
Yes. And it's, an important lesson to know that not every reader is a reader for you.
Yep. Exactly. Don't take it personally.
Nope.
Well, speaking of work and connecting with work, how can listeners connect with you and your work?
So the first and best place to find me is my website, which is very simply davidhankins.com. That's HANKINS. And so I've got links to all of my short stories. Some of them are actually, about half of them are free to read on the internet. The other half are in anthologies that you can buy. As well as links to, once it publishes, links to where you can buy my book, Death and the Taxman, and learn about me. Sign up for my newsletter, the Lost Bards letter. You can get a free story for signing up for the newsletter. And outside of that, I'm on social media. I am currently on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the website formerly known as Twitter, which is now X, Blue Sky, and Threads. So I'm on all of those. I'm most active right now on Facebook and Threads. I found that 2 social medias are really what I can do actively. But I still keep a presence on the others, post, scroll through, comment on people's stuff. And so that's where you can find me.
Perfect. And all of that will be in the show notes. And your book publishes April 2nd, April 15th.
April 15th. Yes.
April 15th.
Death and the Taxman publishes on April 15th, which is tax day. And it will be available wherever fine books are sold, because I plan on going wide. So if you want to get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or at your local bookseller, they can get it through Ingram Spark and just ask them to order it. Please support your local bookstore.
Yes, and that is so great. I'm so glad. I'm so excited. Okay, are you ready for your big question?
I am
We've worked
ready
our
for
way
my big
through
question.
Okay, we have worked our way through all of these topics. And out of everything we have or have not said, what is one piece of advice or encouragement you want listeners to walk away with if they hear nothing else?
Don't give up. So whatever it is that you are doing, whether you're trying to write a book, write a short story, you're going to just live life. You're going to run into obstacles. It will be hard. Life is hard. Writing is harder. However, there's always a next step. So whatever it is that is, stopping you, that you feel that you can't do it, just take the next step. And if that next step is 100% blocked, take a step to the left or right and then move forward. So that's what I did. I started with novels. I was getting absolutely nowhere. I took a step to the left, went over to short stories, and I found a path forward, and then stepped back right to novels. And so whatever you're doing, don't stop, don't quit, just keep moving forward.
Oh, that's great. And as you have shown us, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to find somebody to take that next step.
Absolutely. I started out alone and unafraid. And I have heard it said that authors that are really trying to break in, it takes them 5 to 7 years before they're writing at a professional level. I got professional level much faster than that because I asked for help. I found the right resources. I found people that knew what they were talking about, were willing to help. Found that community, which was the whole thing that brought us together in this conversation in the first place, was talking about writing communities and having that community around me to support me and who I could also support really jump-started my writing skills.
That's fantastic. And that's such an inspirational story, because some of us I am by nature a lone wolf. Like I hate asking for help. I like being the smartest person in the room. I like knowing everything before other people know it. And that's just me being completely transparent. And so I have had to ask for help along this journey. And if I was too afraid to do that, I wouldn't have taken the next step. And I wouldn't have had this sense of appreciation and success that I feel, this personal satisfaction that I feel in this. And so, thank you for sharing your story and for being that inspiration. And just thanks for being here this evening and hanging out.
Well, thank you so much for, creating a platform for connected conversations. It's like you said, we spend way too much time on our phones, clicking through social media or playing silly little games with candies on them. It's very refreshing to step back, put down the phone, and just have a conversation.
Seriously, so nice. Well, best of luck to you. And I look forward to April 15th when, not necessarily tax day, but definitely when your book comes out.
Well,